So the Democrats, I'm sure you've heard the story of Samson at some point in your life, or maybe even seen the old Victor Mature movie. And the Democrats are like the Philistines in the temple when the temple comes tumbling down. I mean, this thing is just falling down on top of them. And again, it's not like they have another set of ideas to go to. And so it's almost cruel to mock them or take pleasure in their pain. But let's not let that stop us. The idea, the reason I'm so excited about this idea is I don't feel that this is an idea that we've had for the last 4 years or since Obama was elected. I feel that what's coming to an end, seriously, and I know this sounds grandiose, but I really think it's true. What's coming to an end, at least for now, is an idea that has been growing since at least the 18th century and maybe earlier, which is the unbelief in God, the unbelief in Christianity, the Judeo-Christian philosophy, the Bible. And this is what people have been talking about for centuries. When people cite Nietzsche, which they do all the time, the left is constantly citing Nietzsche, especially academics, and he said, God is dead, but his shadow is still there. But when the shadow fades away, as the shadow dies, the moral order that grew out of Christianity will die, and we will have to become God because God will be gone. So we'll become God, and we'll make our own moral order, and it won't be this silly thing about helping the weak and giving charity to the poor. It'll be the strong survive, And Nietzsche was only following on the heels of the Marquis de Sade, who basically said, now we can take pleasure in the pain of weaker people. That's why they call it sadism. We can take pleasure in the pain of weaker people because, there's no God. That's what nature does. The strong eat the weak, and we're just going to live like that. We're going to live according to Nietzsche. In fact, Dostoevsky had one of his characters say that once God is gone, once a belief in the afterlife is gone, not only will the morality of Christianity be thrown out, but the exact opposite morality will come into play, which will be egoism. It'll be self, my identity, my desires, my feelings will govern the universe, even to the point of criminality, said Karamazov in Dostoevsky's novel. So I'm watching the protests that the Democrats are putting on, and I can't help. I mean, they're hilarious because these are things they don't understand really how completely the structure has collapsed. They still think that there is a group of people that can come together and hold this together. And the reason they think this is because Europe, which has died. Europe is dead. Europe died in 1945. It's just taken a long time to die. They've abandoned them, and they've just continued to abandon them. In fact, J.D. Vance made an incredible speech to the EU where he just said, we're giving you all this money and giving you all this support, and we keep doing it in the name of democracy, but are you living in a democracies anymore? You arrest people for praying silently outside abortion clinics. In Scotland, they tell people if they pray in their home too close to an abortion clinic, they can be arrested in their home for praying silently. I mean, and he was basically saying, get with it, and they can't get with it because they've essentially been overrun by all these migrants who've come in, and they're afraid of them and they don't know what to do. And so they can't get with it, but we can. We're a much bigger country. We're a much more tolerant country. We're a much easier country to assimilate into. I know a lot of Muslims who have come to America and they think this place is great. Nobody hates me. Nobody's telling me not to pray. I just have to do my job and people will treat me kindly. And that's pretty much true in America still. And we are also getting control of our borders. So they're left there with this kind of European protest in a country that is not going down the drain so fast. In Worcester, Massachusetts, which used to just be this kind of working class, run-of-the-mill Massachusetts neighborhood, they have now declared themselves a sanctuary city for mentally ill people who think they're a different sex than they are. So for trans people, and I don't like making fun of mentally ill people, but they've been mobilized to force their illness on us as reality. And so they had this city council vote, and all the people got up to testify before they voted, I think unanimously. Anyway, it was a big vote in favor of making this a transgender sanctuary, whatever the hell that means. But just listen to some of the people testifying before the city council. Let's cut one.
I need the city to protect me because the federal government won't. And if you think you're afraid of Trump, you should see how afraid of Trump I am.
I don't want to spend an hour applying glitter on my face so that you will hear and see me.
Can you look at me and tell me how many of my friends need to die before you do anything?
Please wrap up.
Look at me.
I don't want to take an hour putting glitter on my face either, so I didn't. I solved that problem right there. But what you hear there is this entitlement and fear, right? The entitlement is my identity defines me, my desires define me, what I want to be defines me, instead of what we all know defines us is the battle between our moral selves, the image of God inside us, and the things that our body wants, which are kind of unbridled, right? The body nature has no limits on what it wants. If it wants something, it wants everything. We just, if you eat cake and you like it, you'd eat cake all the time, but we don't do that because we don't want to be fat and we don't want to be unhealthy. And there are other things we don't do because we don't want to be immoral. So you have this entitlement because you're supposed to be able to define yourself. And then you have this fear because if anybody says, I don't think you are a woman just because you put on a blue wig, then suddenly you vanish. So they're afraid, right? So you have this entitlement, look at me, and this fear, I'm going to die if you don't help me. It's this weird kind of combination. Do you remember the early days of the internet when it felt like this vast open frontier? It felt like a place where you could truly be free from corporate oversight, free from tracking, free from someone looking over your shoulder, kind of like America itself used to be. These days, every time we go online, we're being watched. Your internet service provider sees everything, every site you visit, every click you make. And here's the kicker. In the U.S., they can legally sell all that information to third parties. Your private data becomes just another commodity. That's why I started using ExpressVPN. It's this brilliant piece of technology that routes all of my online activity through secure, encrypted servers. Everything I do online is shielded from prying eyes. My internet provider, data brokers, all of them, because ExpressVPN hides my IP address. For the first time in years, my data actually feels like it's mine again. Imagine that. One of the things I like best about it is it's so easy to use. It's just right there. You don't even see it. You press one button and it's on, and it works on up to 8 devices, phones, tablets, TVs, computers, you name it, it's protected. So find out how you can get 4 months free by scanning the QR code on screen, clicking the link in the description box below, or by going to expressvpn.com/Andrew Klavan Show. In the New York Times, a former newspaper, they had an article about people who ghost people, when you date somebody and then you just disappear. And they said, we're 10 people who ghosted people and what they had to say, why they did it. So I'm glancing at that. That's kind of an interesting read. And there's 10 people, and the first one is straight, and the second one is gay, and the next one is transgender, and the next one is non-binary. And I think if there's so few of them, and you're only naming 10 people, why are so many of them not straight? It's because what they're saying is they're hiding an idea. This idea, it used to be called polymorphous perversity, that the body is in charge of your life. And if the body has a desire, and the body might desire anything. I mean, some guys will sleep with like a knothole in a tree. If it desires it, that is the reality. That's the morality. We are rewriting the morality because God is dead. And it was really nasty of God to tell us we could only, assuage these desires on females who, damn it, have these little babies, and then we have to take care of them, and then we have to build societies that make sure that the women are taken care of. And darn it, it's just not right. We should be able to do anything we want, anytime we want, and that would make us all so much happier. And you can look at those people at that Worcester meeting and see just how much happier they are, right? Because they're hiding the philosophy. The philosophy is there, and it's always been there. And that's why when we have victories, like we had a victory after World War II, when the 1950s came and people came back and all they wanted was home and family and normalcy, and they came back with a very kind of conservative way of life that really restored America and made America incredibly great for about 10, 15 years. They still had not undermined that idea. That idea was still creeping into our colleges and into our movie industry and into our news industry. That idea that we're not living in a sinful world that requires courage and restraint and godliness and prayer. We're not living in that world. We're living in a world that's just matter that can be moved around, and we're so wise and bright that we're going to do it for you. Just don't look, just send us your money and we keep your money and we'll do these things and they'll be wonderful as long as you don't look at them. Because when you look at them, when you look at these books, whenever anybody at school board tries to read one of these books out loud, they've got to stop him because common sense, we are made, I was talking about this last week, we are made to recognize evil when we see it. We are made to recognize what's moral and what's not moral. When we hear these books, they can't hide anymore. So it all depends on silence, on censorship, on intimidation, because their power depends on these ideas. They've been in power for a long time and they don't want that power to go away. So now you have Elon Musk what is he? He's the richest man who's ever lived on earth. He's obviously a brilliant guy in a certain way. And I'm sure in other ways he's not that brilliant a guy, but he's a brilliant guy in a certain, engineering way that is really important. And he's duly appointed by the elected president to cut spending and waste, which people have been promising to do forever. And there are all these ridiculous programs that serve these leftist whims, and they count on or not seeing what they are and claiming that they're not really there. So if they can find one, they asked him about $50 million in condoms going to Gaza. And it turned out they weren't going to Gaza. They were going to some other country. And he said, Musk said, that's a lot of condoms, right? So he's now after the Department of Education, and Chris Rufo was just on Ben's show the other day exposing that what the DOE is spending money on, passing money on to like NGOs that teach pansexuality and anti-whiteness and, all the basic leftist nonsense that they've been shoving down their throats. And a friend of mine who used to work for the DOE, he said the first place they should go is into the printing office, which probably isn't a printing office anymore, to see the propaganda these people are sending out into our schools. So Musk and Doge are terminating all these programs and firing all these things, and the Obama courts are crying foul because they stole that money from taxpayers, so now it's theirs to do what they want. And so you have this kind of mind-boggling vision of like civil service members protesting in Washington, don't take our insidious, useless leftist jobs that we've been using to undermine the country. They're our jobs. Here's just a brief clip of a union process. It's hilarious. Cut 3.
Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against Doge. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon scab within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk.
So they think this is like the union days, the old days when women were working, piecemeal and in fire traps and all this, and had to be unionized to get them out of there. This is absurd. There shouldn't be any public unions anyway, and this is an absurd defense of waste and fraud and anti-Americanism and hatred. They have nothing else to do but to pretend that the ideas that they're defending, these old ideas that have been around now for hundreds of years, that they haven't fallen apart. There's nothing they can do. So the left is attacking Elon Musk. He's this, he's that, he's that, he's this. It's not about him. It is about this idea that they are going to bring perfection to the world. Their power depends on it. They are going to make the world a fair place, even if you don't like it. They were not elected to take care of you, the citizens who elected them. They were not elected to look out for your concerns. They are elected to look out for their much, much higher concerns. That's the idea, and that idea is falling apart. For more Klavan-y goodness, like and subscribe. And for even more Klavan-y goodness, subscribe to The Andrew Klavan Show wherever you get your podcasts.